I had people in India being like, "Oh, is that your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Is that your partner?" I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
this is just a friend." I know this is a wild concept.
Not just a friend,
but
this is a friend.
This is a friend. This is the friend.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
That one.
No, it's
I know just about it.
Yeah.
I know it's a wild concept, but people can be friends regardless of their gender or their presentation.
And that's how we're going to start this podcast.
And that's how we're going to start this podcast. That's how we're going to start this podcast today.
Yeah.
How's it? And welcome to Cha Chat, where we have a chat over cha. Welcome to the second episode. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Taj-Levi. And Taj is one of my good friends who I mentioned in previous episode as one of my close friends. Well, I didn't mention you by name, but you were here. Yeah. Exactly. For people who don't know, Taj is a transmasculine, community-oriented healer, diviner, writer, creative, all the words. Thank you for being here and for being my first guest.
This is nuts.
I know. Going from just regularly drinking chai, and now we have a podcast.
There's a podcast.
Yeah.
We're talking.
Over cha.
In front of mics.
Exactly.
Us narrating everything. This is accessibility.
Exactly, because we'll have viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if y'all needed to know, if you're just listening, I'm hot. I'm black.
Right.
I have on a white shirt, and I have on some jean shorts and some loafers.
And a beautiful keffiyeh.
Atop my head, it's red.
Where's your keffiyeh from?
My dad. Yeah.
Aww.
So I took this from my dad. And so that also makes it really special.
Very sweet. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
On the previous episode, I talked about friendship and how that's raised my standards for love. And you've been one of those friends who have helped raise my standards because you have shown up for me in like so many ways. And I'm so grateful for your friendship. And I know that you really focus on joy and liberation, as well as you focus a lot on removing a hierarchy, I'd say, from loving people. That is not a euphemism for saying polyamorous, but that too. Exactly, that too. But I feel like you are such a loving person, and you've really shown me a lot of what love can look like and how deep love can go, even beyond the title of like a friend, or even beyond the title of what is expected for a friend versus a romantic relationship. And how does that play into your daily life of like, how did you get to this point of this much loving?
Yeah. How did I get to this point? I feel like I've always been sensitive. I've always been soft, and I've always been craving love. And I know. Like starting in high school, I feel like is when I really began to seek out that love. Did not go well for me because I felt like it could only come from romance. And in high school, I've always been queer, but I definitely was navigating life as a cis girl, and in high school in the South. I was in Georgia. So I think that like it just made it seem like the route was cis boys at the time. And so I had a lot of sex with a lot of teenage boys as a teenage girl, y'all. And that wasn't love, like, and it always came because I'm a Pisces rising, and it always started from me being like, I have a crush on this person. He's so funny, so cute, so sweet. And then him being like, I don't want a relationship with you. And me being like, I understand that. But then him being like, but we can do other things. And me being like, love has to come from somewhere, no? And so definitely began with me settling all the time.
Yeah.
Craving love, not really having it at home, not really knowing what it's supposed to look like, and accepting like whatever was coming to me. And I think that I never felt like love was not abundant. I never felt like love did not exist, but I definitely had rose-colored glasses on about what it looked like. And so to me, like a night with a guy who was probably going to act like he didn't know me when he saw me in the halls the next week felt much better than a night by myself sometimes. And
Mhm.
so then I accepted that. But somehow that never turned me like into someone who was like, love doesn't exist, right? I think that I just like have always been searching. And I've also dealt with a lot of terrible friendships. Like
Mhm.
I experienced a lot of instability growing up. So I lived with a lot of my friends when I was in high school as well. And when you need people,
Yeah.
you find out how ugly their hearts are,
Mhm.
because they don't have to be kind to you because you need them.
Exactly.
And so there was another avenue in which I kept experiencing having to accept things that were not good and were not fulfilling. And so also that did not make me feel like love didn't exist.
Mm.
I just kept realizing like, oh, that's not where I'm gonna find that. That's not where I'm gonna find that. And then it took for me coming to New York and experiencing a lot of isolation initially
Mhm.
to like meeting. I feel like you and my friend Mariah were the first people.
I remember, yeah, I
Yeah.
remember right before you moved here,
Mm-hmm.
we became friends through Clubhouse.
Yes.
That throwback to Clubhouse
Throwback to
days.
Clubhouse, throwback to Twitter, and during the pandemic, just always having something to say.
Yeah.
And like like literally Sapna was dropping the divine wisdom.
Mm.
And at the time, I feel like I was like so hungry for knowledge. And
Mm.
so, like, every single time I got the notification that you were in someone else's chat, that you were starting a chat, I
Fan
was
behavior.
in there, forever a fan, forever a fan. And I will say that. Yeah. And so, like, I was in there, like, and I was listening, I was writing notes. I'm pretty sure if I look in my journals, I can find some things that you said and
Yeah.
like me just like writing it down. But yeah, like, I kept finding, myself in relationships that were not feeding me
Mm.
anything nutritious, it was not nourishing to my spirit. And that was no one's fault because I feel now I recognize I'm like, oh, we just all traumatized and trying to figure it out, child.
Mm.
Like, you know, taking on our parents' ugliness, taking on our, the ugliness of the world and like holding it in these relationships and also being young. I'm 25 and I feel like now I have not figured anything out, but now, you know, God has given me so many different intersections to love that I'm like, I
Yeah.
cannot deny it, that it exists and that it like flows for me so easily.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be romantic. Like, I don't know. I find myself feeling lonely sometimes, but it's not because there's no people there,
Mm.
but it's because sometimes I am like, oh, I gotta feel this by myself.
Mm.
Even in a hug makes it better, but damn, this feeling is flowing through me. And sometimes I'm like, can we skip this part? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I feel like experience has gotten me here, but also just the fact that like I've always been brave and strong and like enough to realize that like my ideas of love didn't have to stop where I found it. Yeah.
I really admire that a lot. I feel like for me, I've always struggled a lot with feeling loved and feeling wanted.
Mhm.
I felt like a lot of times I had to fight to be seen and to be loved. And, that I had to be perfect or I had to um, fight for somebody's love.
Mm.
I had to prove myself to be
Yeah.
loved. And that wasn't just in a romantic setting or a familial setting, that was also in my friendships. And I realized how I was bending over backwards and abandoning myself and my feelings and my boundaries just for the sake of keeping the peace and for maintaining a relationship. And like you said, when you need people, they will show you really ugly colors at times.
Yes.
And that's terrifying. I had somebody who I thought was like one of my best friends, and then that friendship ended terribly. It imploded. And I didn't realize how much of a power dynamic was at play until months after that friendship ended. because I became so dependent on that person. I didn't realize how codependent and enmeshed our friendship was. And then when I needed her, she made it seem like I was indebted to her in a way, you know? And that was like, then it started bleeding into other aspects of our friendship of like, oh, don't do this. You shouldn't do this. Or like judging me for decisions I'm making and making it feel like I cannot make a decision without her.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is my life. Who are you to make that decision for me?
Yeah.
That's That's crazy.
It
But
happens like that.
yeah.
Like, and I think that's something like there will always be people that exist that make you feel that way. And I think for me, I have had to honestly rely on reflection.
Mm.
I think the more I allow myself to reflect on relationships that I've had, it gives me such a broad perspective on one, like you said, the things that I accept, but also the things
Mhm.
that I mirror.
Mm.
So like I'm not perfect, you know, I've
Yeah.
never been perfect and also I'm not striving for it. And so I look at friendships that turn sour and I'm like, wow, that person really hurt my feelings a lot in that relationship. But then I can
Mhm.
also say like, how often did I tell them that?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
how much did I let things fester? And I think that I expected people to extend a certain level of compassion to me,
Mhm.
and I didn't extend it back to them because I felt like I was the one who was suffering the most. And
Mm.
so, as long as I wasn't being mean, I
Mm.
was compassionate.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true. And so, I've been just thinking a lot about how, like, me reflecting on the past and like seeing things clearly now that I'm not 17, now that
Yeah.
I'm not 16. And like, I get to see, like, oh, that was just a teenager. And so was I.
Yeah.
And so now I know what compassion looks like in a holistic sense rather than it being like, how can others continue to extend compassion just to
To
me?
me,
Yeah.
yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that just because you're not mean doesn't mean that you're kind.
Yeah.
That kindness and being loving
Hmm.
takes effort.
It's all action.
It's all action.
Yeah.
And you know how people say love is a verb? Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. There's something to be said about being loving.
Yeah.
You know, to be loving, you have to center justice. I think Bell Hooks said something like, there is no love without justice.
Hmm.
You have to, there's no love without kindness and compassion and care,
Yeah.
and how abuse and love cannot exist together, and how harm and love cannot exist together. We can unintentionally harm people, but as it's our responsibility to repair after.
Yeah.
I hate how people online are like, you don't owe people anything. We absolutely owe people everything. We owe compassion, we owe kindness, we owe forgiveness, we owe, well, not always forgiveness, but
Yeah.
we owe the people that we love to be loving. And I feel like you have created such a space for me to feel loved and to also show up and be loving in return. And sometimes I feel like I don't necessarily show up as much as I want to. And you've gently shown me that as well, of like, hey, I don't feel super supported right now, or like, hey, I'm just dealing with things right
Yeah.
now. And I think I also deal with like a lot of anxiety in my friendships of like, am I showing up?
Same.
Am I making them feel loved? Am I being perfect?
Yeah.
And I feel like you remind me that I don't have to be perfect to be loved. And that for you especially, that I don't have to be perfect to one, love you, and to be loved by
Yeah.
you.
I do all of this like in the most clumsy way.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what feels good is like just sometimes falling into shit and being
Mm.
like, oops, that was nuts.
Yeah.
Let me try that again.
Yeah.
And then like perhaps having another oops and like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot that I can learn from children.
Mm.
And I feel like children sometimes say the most like like outlandish things and they're like, I'm sorry. Can I say something different? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like
And I think that's kind of how I navigate love is being like, I'm probably not always going to say the right thing. I'm probably not always going to do the right thing or show up the correct way to the person, but like, let's do that again. Let's
Yeah.
like trial and error this thing together, because I think that I can never know,
Mm.
what a person needs, because it changes every 5 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
like you could be feeling ecstatic right now, and then in 2 minutes we talk about something that like makes you feel a bit dysregulated. And so what you needed 2 minutes ago has now shifted. And like maybe I'll do the wrong thing immediately. And then I'll have to be like, wait, what do you need? And then that gives me clarity. And so, yeah, I'm like so willing to be clumsy now. I feel like,
Yeah.
even though it like produces a bit of anxiety, to know that like I will not always be in control of the full situation. Honestly, rarely ever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel like that's something that I'm trying to learn how to
Yeah.
do more, is being clumsy and to just do things, and that not everything needs to be perfect. And sometimes I would feel like I need to show up perfectly or not show up at all, which then I realized creates such isolation, and it also creates a bit of resentment toward other people and toward me from other people, because then I seem like flaky or wishy-washy of like, oh, she shows up sometimes, and when she does show up, she shows up, but then a lot of the times she's in a shell.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how it made me seem hard to reach out to. um and I feel like my friendships recently have shown me that it's okay to just exist. I feel like I'm a newborn lamb, you know? Like, I've just been born and I'm trying to learn how to walk. And I think that's also in part the trauma. And, you're 25 and I'm 28, but I feel mentally 25. I feel like that could be the years that COVID lockdown took away from me,
Listen.
or also just like trauma in general.
Yeah.
But I feel really lucky to have the friendships that I do and to have you as my friend. And something that I really admired about you is just not only just how loving you are, but your commitment to being clumsy. Not even just like allowing yourself to be clumsy, but you're like, I'm going to be clumsy and I'm accepting that I'm going to be clumsy and I'm okay with being clumsy. And I'm sitting over here like, I want to be like that. I'm like, oh, that's an option? Like, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Because perfectionism has been so deeply embedded in me, where it feels like I cannot make any move until I know that it's going to be perfect. And that terrifies me. Ryan's got some commentary off camera.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I think, well, would you guys both say that there's like a subconscious conditioning towards that under the guise of being consistent to exist and be perfect via patriarchy? Like, that's a subconscious aspect that you could just exist in.
Yeah.
Or that you're held to a higher standard of being perfect for that regard, because you have to hold some kind of family structure, quote unquote, together, allegedly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like because of being a woman and being raised as a girl, especially as a South Asian girl, I have had to grow up with being perfect. There's such an emphasis on you have to be perfect. It's your responsibility to keep the family together. It's your responsibility to act a certain way, especially in public. There's this whole term of sanskari, which is like being demure and having traditional values and being, I don't even know how to translate it to English. Sanskar is like values, but being sanskari is often attributed to women. You rarely hear like, oh, that boy is so sanskari. It's always like, oh, is that girl sanskari? And that trips me up so much because it's a thing from such a young age. You'll see treatment so different between girls and boys. I feel like my cousins who were guys were treated so differently from me. I was expected to my grandmother literally said, if you don't know how to make roti and cha, who's gonna marry you? I'm like, lady, on her deathbed, she's looking at my aunt like, get Sapna married into your family. We need to get Sapna married. And she's like reading my palm to see when I'm gonna get married, what my lines are looking like. And she's like, we need to get Sapna married. Get Sapna married into your family. I'm like, you are dying and you're thinking about my marriage? That is your thought? There is such a conditioning towards women, especially within South Asian culture, and especially like having to be perfect and the homemakers and having to be the ones who are beautiful but not too beautiful. You have to be smart but not too smart. You can't be smarter than guys, but you have to be smart. You have to be this perfect child, or else you will ruin the reputation of your family. That is such a burden and so much pressure to place on a child. It pisses me off. It pisses me off.
No, it's frustrating. I feel like I have always purposely rebelled. I'm like, who the cares what my parents want from me? They aren't even caring for me properly. And I think by the time I was 15, like, I was like, I'm gonna do what I want. I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna do what I want. And like, that's basically how I feel like I allowed myself to unlearn a lot of those things really quickly. Is because I was like, the hell with y'all. I'm like, love y'all, but y'all don't know anything. And I think also like might be the autism, but if it doesn't make sense, what do you want me to do with this? And so it's like, you want me to be a doctor, but you don't even know what grades I graduated high school with. There was no academic support here, like things like that. And so I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to be a doctor. I barely made it through because I had no support. So it's like things like that. I'm like, if it does not make sense, it's really hard for me to grip onto it. And so I won't. And so I've navigated as a rebellious. And the rebellion is literally just being myself.
I feel like I've only just started to adopt that mentality as an adult. And I think a part that plays into it is that I have money now. Because I have my own job and I'm an adult now, I can literally be like, all of y'all. You know, I can be like, I'm an adult. You're not paying my bills. And my mother, I'm really lucky. My mother is so supportive. You know, she's my biggest supporter. And our relationship dynamic has changed a lot over the years, and she has really grown. I feel like we've grown together. Like, as I grew up, she was also unlearning a lot of things, and she also grew up by my side. You know, after divorcing my father, I feel like she really gained a lot of freedom. A lot of times, you know, we'll be out for a walk at 11 p.m. and she'll be like, I feel so much freedom. You know, she's like, I'm so happy we live in New York. I'm so happy that there's no man in my house telling me what to do or how I can be or what to eat or what to make. You know, the only person I have to answer to is myself and to you. You know, she's like, you're my child. You're the only person I care about. And it's so funny. I feel like she has really encouraged me to also be like everybody. Because she's like, being sanskari, forget family. I don't give a what people in India are saying about you. You know, it doesn't matter. I was like, if somebody sent you a picture of me in my dress, because somebody has done this before, and she's like, I was like, when somebody sent you that photo of me and was saying, oh, look at your daughter and how she's dressing, is this your values? She shouldn't be going out like this? She was literally like, F you. She was literally like, my daughter looks beautiful. I don't care what you have to say. Like, who are you to say how my daughter can and can't dress? Who are you to say that my daughter is showing up in a certain way? You don't know her. You're all the way in India. Like,
You know.
who are you? So I feel like having her support has really also been a way for me to be like, yeah, I can just be myself.
Yeah.
It's reaffirming in your ability to create your own universe, respective of what you actually prioritize.
Yeah.
My own universe.
Mhm.
Exactly. I feel like I'm starting to create my own little world of, and also learning how to take up space within that.
Mhm.
And if I can take up space within my world, I can take up space in the world.
But
Mhm.
part of that also with the respective justice and freedom both of you have found with that, I know a lot of us like kind of connotate the unaliving the oink oink in your head kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that does, I don't know. I forgot who I was conversing with the other day, and they told me that, you know, some people still and like never outgrow that mindset of like, if I do this, I'm gonna get in trouble, or like somebody's gonna
Yes.
Yeah.
think of this,
Most
or
people.
yeah,
I still deal with that
yeah,
a lot.
Yeah.
or
And
like
sometimes the trouble is yourself.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
if I don't do this correctly, I'm going to shame myself for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
I am going
Me.
to take things and extract things away from myself as a form of punishment.
Mm.
And I think that's also like just like a way that I've grown in love as well, as recognizing that like I don't have to punish people
Mhm.
for not doing life correctly, because as an abolitionist, as
Yeah.
a Black person in general,
Mhm.
I'm like, what the hell do I look like creating punishments for people
Yeah.
Mhm.
who are trying? I don't like that.
Yeah.
And so I definitely agree with that. Like most people navigate things that way. And I think that even when we talk about just doing things right in the first place, I'm like, what the does that even mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, what does that even mean? And like,
Because
because
right is subjective.
and it
Yeah.
is, and I'm like, to me, I can look at you and be like, oh, like, what do you need?
Mhm.
And that would be how to care for you correctly, you
Mhm.
know, rather than it being like, well, my mom told me that this is actually how you care for your friends, and so
Yeah.
I
and I'm like, no, like, what do you need?
I
Like,
s-
Like
how
this
can
is
I
what some
care for
person on
you?
the internet
I
Yeah,
struggle
said.
with that
Yeah.
sometimes in like a romantic context, because I
Mm.
was I think the last of a vanguard in that regard, socialized in like classical masculinity in terms of like I don't know, like a Fabio
Mm.
kind of like, you know, take care of yourself, make sure you look good, make sure your
Yeah.
outfit's good, make sure you got a good fragrance on,
Yeah.
be poetic in your expression of how you articulate that you have appreciation for a woman, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And I came off very like a lot of bravado and machismo.
Yeah.
Um and in
Love
reality,
bomby.
yeah. Yeah, and love bomb me inadvertently, you know, regardless of the intention, I did that
Yeah.
to people. Um and it didn't allow for me to show up
Mm.
for how the person respectively perceived and felt and received love.
Mhm.
Um and blockaded me from learning that. And being like an active listener and being attentive on how or what that person needs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um
There's been so many times where I thought I was loving somebody because this is how I would want to be loved.
mhm,
But then I realized that they don't feel loved because we don't have the same love language. We don't love or feel loved in the same way. And I've had that happen with me as well, where somebody's like, I love you so much. And I'm like, where? I don't feel loved. Mostly in like a romantic setting where I'm just like, I don't feel loved. And I also realized like how to love somebody, we have to take the effort in learning how to love them in their language. We have to learn their language. We have to go through the effort. I feel like love, regardless of if it's romantic or platonic, it takes effort, and we have to allow ourselves to do that work of like learning somebody's love language, not just in like, oh, acts of service or words of affirmation. No, love language in the way of like, oh, this person feels loved when I hold them in this way. This person feels loved when I take out the trash. You know, this person feels loved when, for example, my friends know that I hate red roses,
mhm,
and they make it a point and make sure not to get me red roses because trauma. But I have a note in my notes app of different friends, like what their favorite color is, when their birthday is, what uh something that they just talked about that they really want, or like that they're really interested in. It's things like that where I'm like, okay, to be loved is to be seen. So I want to see people and I want to be seen.
Mhm.
How can I make my friends be seen? You know, what does loving look like to them? What does being loved look like to them?
I have been really like holding on to the idea of a slow cooked love
Yes,
and
I
a
love a slow
slow cooked
burn.
like romance. And all of this is coming from like my longest lasting partner. I
Mm-hmm.
have a romantic non sexual partner named Joy. That's my baby. I love them so much. I went to high school with them and we stopped being friends for a second and then we reconnected years ago. And now I'm like, well, I've known you for a decade. And I it's so seamless the way that we love each other. And I find myself comparing our relationship to other relationships. And I realize that the only thing that we have that others don't have is the time.
Mm.
And everybody is so stuck on like instant gratification
Yeah.
that we forget that like usually it's time.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're saying like, I want to have a million forevers with you. I want to die knowing that you are my lover. Then why can we not take our time? You know? And so, like, I have a lover now, and I just started a relationship with him in January. And he is a lot like Joy. Like they have a lot of the same astrological placements and all these things, but we still butt heads sometimes. And I'm like, this is so funny. This is me and Joy 9 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And so like being able to see things that way, it's like I'm so excited to keep doing this with you because I know that in 5 years and 6 years, we will have these like very seamless conversations that like we don't have to butt heads as much. And when we do, it's like we can look at each other and like bust out laughing because it's like, this is silly. Like, why are we doing this? And like in the beginning of like learning to love someone, it's usually clumsy and it's usually like not very put together. And so then I look at love and I'm like, oh, it's slow cooking. Like, you know, the carrots are still hard, you know, in this roast. And like with me and Joy, we're still learning. Like our relationship always has space to develop because like there's going to be so many different parts of our growth that we're going to be witnessing of each other. And like now like I just am getting to experience Joy in person for like a long amount of time and like super intimately, and I'm realizing that movement is one of our love languages together. Like we'll just like breathe and dance and we're like moving our bodies, and like Joy will be overwhelmed. I'm like, Joy, here, take my breath. And I'll like dance it to them and I like push it to them and then they'll do it back and then we'll do like little word games and wordplay. And I'm like, this is what it looks like when you let love cook. And like sometimes even when the meat is tender, you might need to put an extra herb in there, you know, something. And I don't know, I've really been like holding on to that of like, we got time. And I'm like, honestly, I don't know a lot of things about you. Like there's things that Ryan knows that I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool. You got time, you know? And I don't need to like know everything about you right now in order to say that I deeply love you and that I'm always thinking of you. I'm like, my lover, Kaiser, he's been in my life like for like, what's this month? 8 months. And like, he knows about you. And I'm pretty sure I've spoke about you more than I've called you in the last 8 months. And so I think like it's important to understand that like we got time. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you know, our lives are going to be long. I mean, hopefully, maybe, but like also like, I don't know, it's going to keep existing. My heart will always beat for you. Like in the ether, I'll be a little twinkling star looking down at
You're
you.
gonna make me
Like,
cry.
I don't know. I think
Gosh.
about things just like moving slowly and how important that is because we don't have to rush to be loved because there's always love being simmered and cooked in all these different intersections. I'm like, you looking at Ryan and continuing to be able to cue them in and be like, yeah, you know this about me. You know this about me. Like, I'm like, that is a slow cooked love.
I feel like people are terrified nowadays, are really fearful of saying lover because, oh, they're like, oh, this is so much commitment. People are afraid of commitment these days too. but
I don't know nothing about that.
I do. I have encountered many a villain.
Yeah.
On a dark and stormy
Listen,
night.
I give up on cis men.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I
Same
don't
here.
blame you.
Yeah, if you see me with a cis man, I need help.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because I, like, in my queer exploration, I
Yeah.
realized I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
sadly, I'm still attracted to cis men.
Me too.
But as a queer person, there's so many options for me that I don't have to touch y'all.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have to be with y'all. Like, I don't have to do that. But yeah, it seems scary out there.
Yeah, it is.
Anytime someone's talking to me about a cis man, I'm like, whew, I'm sorry.
Cis people in
Literally-
general sometimes.
Like, scary.
Literally, when I was dating that doctor last
Mhm.
year, many of my friends were like, "This is a white cis het man. Are you okay?" And that's not the first time I dated a white cis het man.
I hope it's the last.
I told
Ryan
her that.
said the same
I told
thing.
her that before. It's okay.
But it definitely made me realize like a lot of the dynamics that come into play. I
Mhm.
talked about intersectionality a little bit in the
Yeah.
previous episode of like being a queer person, being a person of color. Those two things came into play
Yeah.
in my dating or relationship with those people. And I realized like, oh, you really don't understand my experience. And not only do you not understand my experience, you are not wanting to learn more about my experience. You're not wanting to go through the unlearning
Like, you're
of
not
your
curious.
own privilege.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. There's no curiosity there. There's also no understanding or wanting to learn like how your privilege can also affect our relationship.
Yes.
I know Ryan is like, I'm no longer dating white people because
No,
of this.
I mean, yeah, aside from that, but also like and it's not even like a half ignorant, like non-informed opinion. Like
Yeah.
in my personal experience, hopefully, trigger warning for sexual assault, all the people who've sexually assaulted me have been white AFABs.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make me comfortable. My experiences, people haven't had the nuance and the ideas and the thought, as though both of you have articulated, to hold space for me as aptly as I needed. But I also still know that by virtue of being socialized and raised and being AMAB, I will be, if I date an AFAB person, I am dating the person I am oppressing innately. So I have to be attentive and intentional about how I yearn and focus on understanding and showing up for them how I can.
Yeah.
Regardless of my privilege.
Yeah.
I think like love is deeply political to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what I mean when I say that is that if I'm saying Black queer people deserve to be loved deeply,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I am going to deeply love Black queer people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If my focus is on Indigenous people and brown people and trans people, that is who I am going to love. I don't think that white men, white women, white non-binary people even are struggling in the love sector as much as Black and brown people are. I am not, my love is intentional. My love is sweet. My love is patient. I'm learning patience, but it's patient enough, you know, in this moment. And I'm like, that's going to go to the people that I say deserve that love. And it's not to say that y'all don't deserve it, but y'all got it. And if y'all don't, I hope y'all find it. I'm going to send y'all all the good. And actually, no, I'm not.
No.
I'm like, I'm lying.
RTF.
But my point is, politically, these are the people that I feel like should be centered. And so they're going to be centered in my life personally.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to also like hope that the world continues to center these people. But I can only be me. And so that's who's going to receive my love.
Yeah.
And so if I'm talking about a lover, always imagine them Black and always imagine them queer. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. And like, if I'm talking about, you know, a friend that I care for deeply and all these things, like you said, the intersectionality, they're going to be a person of color. They're going to be trans, they're going to be queer. And like, if not, they're my biological family. And even then, I probably won't talk about them as sweet because they don't give me the sweetness that queer POC give me. And that's just how I feel about it, for sure. Yeah.
You know, I think about like family a lot.
Yeah.
And to me, you and Ryan are family.
Yeah.
Like, if God willing, I ever have kids someday, you're gonna be their family.
Listen.
Like, I know that y'all
Prepare
are
to be
gonna show
sick
up
of
to
me.
their
Yeah.
recitals
Listen.
and everything.
Yeah.
I
Be
think
loud
about
and
the
annoying.
future a lot.
Yeah.
And like you said, we have time.
Yeah.
When you mentioned slow cooked love,
Yeah.
I think about how you love people through phases. Like when I met you, that was pre-transition,
Free everything.
pre-everything.
Yeah.
You were dating a cis
I
man.
was, listen,
Yeah, that was the time.
free me. Why did nobody come get me out of that relationship? God.
I tried. I was like, I don't know if this relationship is that healthy.
Listen,
That's
I'm a
real
Capricorn.
evolution
You
work.
gotta say, run, get out. Like, don't talk to me soft like
Knock,
that.
knock.
When I need to do, I'm hard headed,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, he's not that bad.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, damn, emotional
It
damage.
was that bad.
It's the water.
4 years
Yeah.
of emotional damage,
Yeah.
and like, yeah,
Yeah.
you knew me
Yeah.
through.
But
I
I feel like
different
it's
people.
I feel like it's such an honor to see you, to have gotten that privilege of seeing you through those different phases of
Mhm.
life. Like to see you go from there to now and to see the person that you've stepped into and the person that you've become. And I'm like, wow, I love Taj so much.
Yeah.
And I am so looking forward to the future and seeing the person that they become even more. And it's the same with Ryan. It's the same with, you know, my other friends as well. I'm like, wow, I have such privilege in having gotten to see them go through all of these phases. And you've gotten to see me go through so many
Listen,
phases.
I think about when I came to your house and we spent like 2 hours looking at your Pinterest boards.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I'm like, I just remember looking at you and being like, I don't think I've ever dreamed as thoroughly as you do. And that is so deeply admirable. Dreaming, so deeply admirable. And I am aloof and I am a dreamer, but I think that I don't allow it to get specific because for a long time I'm like, I would just love if I could just have a little apartment and, you know, a friend, ooh, you know, and like, I'm like, damn, I need to learn a lot from Sapna because like there's so much more to dream about and to like continue conjuring into my life. And I just remember sitting on that bench with you and like you being like, wait, there's another section. And me being like, I need more sections. I need more sections of, you know, what I dream and imagine for my life to be and hold nothing back. Like, and I'm still connected to that Pinterest board.
Yeah.
You know?
You get all the
And every
notifications.
time I go on Pinterest, it just reminds me that like, I am never asking for too much.
Yeah.
Like there's another section I can add actually. And like, yeah, it's been delightful to get to know you through all these phases. And like the same way that you were saying earlier of like, sometimes like that anxiety comes of like, am I being a good enough friend? Am I showing up enough? I'm like, listen, I feel stressed about that all the time. Because like I said, did I say this already? This is what I feel. I don't view friends or romantic partners as, you know, we all here, you know, like there are people that I see more consistently. And it's just because that's how it aligns, you know, but it's not because one person is more important.
Yeah.
I'm very much a situational person. If I have a date with one person, but another person is in crisis, the date is canceled. I'm going to the person in crisis. If the other person is like, I won't have availability for these amount of days, but I had a date with that person for that day. And I'm like, oh, well, it only aligns for me to see this person this day. And I know I could see this person whenever. I'm going to see that person whenever rather than being like, sorry, my boyfriend says like that. No. So yeah, I just think about.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, right? And so I'm just like holding on to that all the time and being like, it feels pressure sometimes, you know, because I'm like, I love y'all. Like, deep, and like you said, like action is important. And I'm like, there's only so much I can do, but also like realizing that like, oh, that's where the compassion comes in. Because it's like when I see you, I'm just like deeply present with you.
Exactly.
And that's what's important.
I think it's really disheartening when I've had friendships where once they get a boyfriend or once they get a girlfriend or
it's like, where are you?
Exactly. It's like our friendship has taken a back burner.
Yeah.
And I know in our friendship and my friendship with Ryan and some of my closest friends, that is not present. It's like you are on the same playing field. You
Yeah.
are at the same level as my romantic relationship. I have the same responsibility toward you that I would my romantic partner.
Yeah.
You occupy different spaces, but you have the same level of love.
Yeah.
That loving might look different, but it's that same level and that same effort that I
Yeah.
would put in a romantic relationship, that I would put in my friendship.
It's very much like, if you feel like our relationship has taken a back burner, I'm sad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm having a hard time letting people know how to show up for me.
Yeah.
Like, I've had that happen before, of like my friend being like, hey, like, I feel like you haven't been putting a lot of effort into showing up. And like,
Mhm.
they probably see like that I was with my boyfriend. And I'm like,
Mhm.
haha, yeah, my boyfriend's making sure that I eat
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and shower.
Yeah.
So yes, he's over every day.
Yeah.
You can come over too.
Yeah.
You know, you have my location. I'm home. I'm not at the club. I'm not like
Exactly.
having a great time right now. And so like also just like having that curiosity too, of like, sometimes it does feel like, oh, this person is now in a romantic relationship. I feel like our friendship has taken a back seat. But sometimes it's also like, this person is probably having to navigate a lot of very new feelings and different things, which in turn feels a bit isolating to them, but hard to explain. Let me check on my friend.
Mhm.
And so I think it's also really important to just like ask questions, rather than being like, I feel like our relationship has taken a back burner because romance is in your life, rather than being like, how are you navigating adding a new person to your life in this way? You know, is intimacy hard for you right now? Where's your cup? How full is it? How can I add to that? And definitely learning to be more curious about things, rather than being like, this is what I see, so this is what it is. That's been really
Perception.
helpful. Yeah.
Perception as reality is a very big, hard thing to
Yeah.
break for everyone in the world.
Yeah.
Perception as reality. Yeah.
Exactly. Because you might think your perceived reality is reality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, there's been times where you and I felt like, oh, is Ryan upset at me right now? Is
Mhm.
something going on? Because Ryan's not talking to me like we usually talk.
Mhm.
I'm a very anxious person where I notice the slightest difference
Yeah.
in tone or when somebody pulls away.
Mhm.
But then there's been times where you've had to be like, hey, I'm just going through stuff right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
And I can't really show up the way that I would usually show up,
Or explain.
but
Yeah.
I'm just going through things. And then that makes me think, oh my God, I've been so selfish in a way, just like thinking. When I say selfish, I mean thinking only of myself and thinking automatically like, oh, they must hate me, rather than let me ask what's going on, rather than just assuming something is wrong.
Yeah.
Conversely, there was a time, I think like roughly 4 years ago, where we kind of just like had a point blank talk about like what our state of affairs was with our relationship as friends.
Yeah.
And you kind of just told me that like, hey, I know how we met and stuff like that, but like you haven't
People
been
who
in
don't know, Ryan and I met on Tinder.
it was Tinder, and then what's the other one? Okay Cupid.
Okay Cupid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
Ryan
was
and I
2 for
met on
1.
Tinder and Okay Cupid. And then I do dating apps wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. People are looking for relationships or hookups or whatever. I end up making friends. I have made 5 different friends
Same.
from dating apps, Ryan being one of them.
Half of the people that follow me on Instagram, I'm pretty sure are like people I've gone on like maybe one date with or no
Yeah.
dates.
Yeah.
Then we just became
But we
Also
very
just, like,
quickly
queer evolution is like
Yeah.
lovers to friends, or like
yes.
interested to friends, and like things
Mhm.
like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, we vibing.
Yeah.
We
why not?
kissed,
Yeah.
but we vibing.
Yeah, what
I
else?
feel like we very quickly like hit it off, and we
Mhm.
were like, I think we're better off as friends.
Mhm. And we were both like, yeah.
Yeah, we were both like, yeah, we're really good friends.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of kissing,
Mhm.
let's talk about kissing the homies.
Kissing the homies.
Because I know you're a big believer in kissing the homies, and you kissed me on my birthday,
I did.
and that made me feel so warm. And I'm also a believer in kissing the homies, in
Yeah.
like removing that like
Stigma.
connotation of something
Yeah.
with like, oh, I can only kiss my romantic partner. I feel like that's such a big thing with being queer and
Yeah.
queer friendships, is like
Mhm.
intimacy in that way,
Mhm.
and also removing a sexual aspect from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No.
To me, definitely everything is person to person. I don't feel like I need to kiss all my homies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
but I'd like to kiss
I'm just special.
all of my lovers and friends are special. But yes, you are deeply special to me. But yeah, like sometimes like I have friends and they're like not into physical touch much at all.
Mhm.
And then like cue me being in their life. Next thing you know, they're like reaching for my hand as we walk and things like that. I feel like I just got, that touch of like safety, I guess, because I
Mhm.
feel like I am non expectant for
Mhm.
touch from anyone.
Mhm.
And so, like, people get the choice to see or
Mhm.
say whether or not they want it.
Mhm.
And so it's just been really cool to like experience like intimacy in that way of being like, no one owes me anything,
Yeah.
but like
Mhm.
letting y'all know that a
Mhm.
kiss would not never, harm our relationship because just because you kiss me once does not mean you have to kiss me again.
Yeah.
And just because this happens once does not mean this has to happen again. And also this doesn't ever have to happen, but
Mhm.
that doesn't speak to how
Mhm.
much depth we have in this
And
relationship.
also just that if we kiss, that doesn't change the dynamic of our friendship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Also, I think you had something to say.
No, that was on something earlier
Oh,
though.
no,
But
do tell. What were you gonna say earlier?
I was gonna bring up like you kept it. Oh wow, look at that. That was my phone, everybody. Um, so I was gonna talk about the time in which you and I conversed on the phone, and you were just like commenting on the state of affairs about our friendship, and you were like, "Hey, I know like we've been friends for a minute, but like you haven't been like here with me, like present physically with me. We haven't like bonded and spent time together in person much.
Yeah.
So you kind of got a ways to go."
Yeah.
And I was just like, damn.
Yeah.
I was just like, you're right. One, but two, of course, I slid back into that sphere of like almost like pivoting that Taj previously spoke about in terms of being like, okay, so what do I do? Where do I show up? How do I? And like over planning,
Mhm.
when in reality, I kind of found more freedom and you felt almost more relaxed in terms of me just making more space for you to just be
Yeah.
as you are and just being intentional and compassionate and soft and sincere when I show up
Exactly.
for you. And it just came with time. Like
Yeah.
us, like how
Like what Thoughts
deep
was
and
saying.
fulfilling. Yeah, exactly,
It
exactly.
takes
So I was just,
time.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I also feel like you created space for me to lead in
Mhm.
what makes me feel loved.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to show you.
Mhm.
And I also just straight up told you,
Mhm.
I'm like, this is what makes me feel cared for, or like, this is what I need from you. Or like, I remember during our conversation, I straight up was like, yeah, you have a ways to go. We are not that close yet,
Mhm.
and I need more time. I think I remember saying like I need more time
Mhm.
to see where our friendship goes and how our friendship develops, because in a way it felt like we were rushing for closeness.
Mhm.
And I've noticed this in other friendships as well, where it feels like people are trying to rush to that intimacy part
Mhm.
without doing the work that it takes to get to that point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's how I feel too. I feel like that's why I was like talking about things being slow cooked because like we have the internet. Everything is fast now. The
Mhm.
internet, like I can just rapid fire my thought right now to thousands of people and
Mhm.
like they'll receive it, they'll hear it, and then they'll move on to someone else's thought. And so it seems like it's really easy to rush into intimacy. And like for me, I have like as someone who has dealt with a very hypersexual phase and
Mhm.
dealt with all these things and like walked away from those things feeling quite depleted and empty. I'm like, damn, I need the kind of sweetness that I'm asking for to fill me up. And so it's like anybody can come and hold my hand,
Mhm.
but anybody's hand is not going to fill me up.
Mhm.
Like I can kiss anyone.
Mhm.
It's not always going to fill me up. And so I
Mhm.
feel like I'm very intentional about naming things.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
if I come over and we cuddle and we kiss and we
Mhm.
just talk about the future, like I can go home and be like, I had a really sweet time with Sapna.
Mhm.
But then I can also have a hookup where we kiss and we do other things and things like that. And then I'll go, I had a hookup with this person.
Yeah.
There's a different
Just
naming
because
to that.
things are happening, like for
Mhm.
example, if just because you kiss somebody
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's sweet.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Exactly.
mean that it has
Or that there
that
was even
same
intimacy there.
exactly.
Yeah. And so for me, I'm
People
definitely
think
like,
people
let's
think
name it.
sex is intimacy.
Mhm.
People think sex is intimacy all the time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, sex does not equal intimacy. At least not to me.
Not all the
Like
time.
intimacy.
You can never have sex and live a life full of intimacy.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, literally, I feel like it's really intimate that I get to look at your eyes right now
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
across the table. I mean, like, it's so funny. I was like, oh, you're far.
I know. I was thinking that too. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, Dan,
Oh
you're
my
so far
goodness.
away.
So yeah, I'm like heavy on the slow cooked, slow baked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, we do not have to turn the oven to
And-
450. You
Mhm.
can actually keep it at 350 and leave it in for an extra 30 minutes.
I mean,
Exactly.
like,
you know, concerning both of what you're talking about in terms of slow cooked love and just like building up to that without actively experiencing things that like fasten or like bring you together over time. I feel like there's a lot of nuances throughout life that hasten that. Like for me personally, a lot of times in which I've wanted to be also like, yeah, specifically the time in which that we were having that conversation,
Mhm.
I wanted to be there for you because you were going through like a really big period of strife and grief in terms of processing something that we won't talk about presently.
Yeah. I was
Um,
going through a lot.
so I just wanted to jump to be like, okay, so this is a game time shot. I could be like, okay, I could probably get basketball terms. I don't even watch it like that really. MVP if I just show up for you right now,
Yeah.
and be here for you in your moment of need. But it's just like, no, I need to do the rational work and experience you, and actively listen to you so you could tell me how I can be
Mhm.
effective
Mhm.
more immediately with my allotment.
Exactly.
And also like conversely, more so about what Taj was talking about. Um, within a queer perspective, I think like trans femme things for me, um, within a sapphic kind of guise, there's a lot of like, okay, so I love you. It is day 3. And we're gonna
U-Haul.
yeah, U-Haul. Yeah, we're moving in and like this love is fulfilling and vivacious and breathes so much life into me.
Mhm.
And that's true. But it's also just like I know on the flip side, I still have to learn and like understand and feel the grooves
Mhm.
of your heart to understand exactly how
Mhm.
um and what you need.
Yeah.
because I also move fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
like,
used to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a quick, because to me, I'm like, yeah, it feels good. Let's do
Mhm.
this. And I agree that it takes more,
Mhm.
but I'm like, let's get here and let's establish that more is gonna happen. And so
Yeah.
Mhm.
sometimes I'm like, I set myself up with that where
Mhm.
like I go really hard really quickly and I don't fall, but I'm like
Mhm.
really into this. I'm
Yeah.
really fixated on the idea of creating more intimacy with a
Mhm.
person, with people, and then I'm like, oh shit, there were things I did not consider here. Like I didn't consider how we
Yeah.
communicate. I didn't consider like how you navigate being angry, how you navigate
Mhm.
being upset. I didn't consider, the fact that, you know, maybe you have a big family. I don't really
Mhm.
have a family, and how triggering that might be for me to be around yours. And like,
Mhm.
there's things that I don't consider going into relationships
Yeah.
sometimes where I'm like, this is my love for life. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's just really funny to
Yeah.
be in that because I'm like, God, I'm so gay.
Mhm.
And I think that also, like, I don't regret it because I'm like, even if it doesn't like last a long time, I'm like, that was nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a how the kids say an era.
It was an era,
Era.
It was an era.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In which you got to exist in the
Exactly.
vast expanse of what your potential for love was. And also let's
Mhm.
I don't know, I feel like
I don't think it's potential. I'm like, I loved.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
real.
I think that's something that I've grown to feel is like, for example, with the Capricorn, we're all just gonna call him that. We all know, or at
Giving me
least
a
my
bad
friends
look.
know. My friends
This man
know
gave me a
how
bad look.
terrible that went with that Capricorn man. But I gave so much of my life, so many years of my life to somebody who could not cherish me. And I loved him so deeply, or at least what I thought was love. And I loved him even when we were just friends, even when I just viewed him platonically. I loved him so deeply. Um, and then after that crashed and burned, I learned that, oh, yeah, this I loved. Like, I know it sucked and it hurt so much, but I have a receipt. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is proof that I loved.
Yeah.
And it was such a gift that I know I have that depth of love, that I can love somebody so much, and even somebody who was so terrible to me in so many ways. Imagine when I actually love somebody who loves me back. Like, I just because something had quote unquote failed, just because a relationship didn't last,
Mhm.
whether platonic or romantic, doesn't mean it was a failure.
Yeah,
You
I actually
know?
just made a TikTok on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like last week. And I was like, I really hate that people say they failed at relationships or
Plug.
a relationship failed because it didn't last forever.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that every relationship that is meant to impact me is meant to last forever.
Mm.
I have like lovers that are no longer my lovers that I still
Mhm.
think about.
Mhm.
My ex-girlfriend, I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
like
I
my heart still like, is really tender for her.
Mhm.
And our relationship didn't fail.
Yeah.
We needed different things and we'll get them.
And sometimes people are just meant to come into your life to teach you things.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean
you know?
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like love really. I don't know how to describe it. I feel like my love never really disappears for people. Maybe it, like,
Mm-mm.
gets farther into my subconscious of like my heart, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
But it always exists.
It always exists and
Yeah.
it never really dies. But of course, that's hard to contextualize because people don't
Yeah.
have that same feeling. Like, there's people that understand, like, oh, we haven't spoken in 2 years.
Mhm.
We're still good.
Yeah.
But then there's people who are just like, oh, you're a stranger. I hope you've like acknowledged that
Yeah.
just because we haven't spoken in 5 months. And I'm just like, oh,
Or like in
But like
regards
both can be true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or like in regards to an ex, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, that relationship no longer exists, so that love no longer exists."
Exists.
Yeah.
And that love, I feel like love is neither created nor destroyed.
Mhm.
You know, I feel
It
like
just
for
is.
me, it just is.
Mhm.
And like, for example, with that Capricorn man, um, things ended terribly, and uh, I will probably never speak to him again. But there's still a part of me that will always hold love for him,
Mhm.
even though I have like anger as well, even
Yeah.
though I have hurt. Uh, those can
Mhm.
coexist.
Yeah.
You know, there's a part of me that will always care for him, and wherever he is, I hope he's doing well. I know y'all don't.
No, I mean,
I don't hope anything.
I don't.
ever.
Yeah, I don't hope.
You don't hope anything
hope
for that
anything.
person.
I
Yeah.
think
Literally, Tyler was like, I wish him the worst.
I kind of like I relate to you in some regard because there's definitely people that I've dated in which, like, when I get past how I've been done wrong by them sometimes, I'm just like, oh, when I connect all the factors of what you've told me about how you've been socialized and what you've been through as a child and stuff like that, and connect all the things, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you were gonna be like this.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
don't know, you were just acting from what you were taught, and you are a victim of your circumstance. So I'm just like, as a result, an extension of that, I became a victim of your circumstance because you just didn't have the resources and the time and the space to be able to like start unlearning and apply yourself
Yeah.
to have that certain level of dedication to undoing that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I get to a point where it's like, yeah, you did me greasy, but like,
Yeah.
damn, like, I hope you're able to like unlearn this so you could actually live a life that doesn't steer you into self-destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Like,
can love them from afar.
yeah, not even love, just like, are you going to be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Like,
care for them.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you.
and I think that's what the most recessive version of my love is, just like
Mhm.
a baseline level of empathy that it's like, I hope you're
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I hope you're able to put food on your table. I hope you're living a life that fulfills you.
Yeah.
I hope you're taking care of yourself.
And it's
Exactly.
so hard navigating from that space because that's usually why a lot of people stay
Mhm.
in relationships that they don't need to be in anymore. So I like am like always holding on to that when I'm in relationship of like, am I here because I don't believe in you?
Mhm.
Or am I here because we need to be together?
Yeah.
Like my ex I was in a relationship with for 4 years. I was there because I felt like he needed me.
Mm.
Mhm.
I was like, if I'm not here for you, who
Who
will
will
be
be?
here for you?
Yeah.
You don't deserve to be out on the street. You don't deserve to,
Yeah.
Mhm.
be like unsupported.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
so
how I was
I'll
too.
support you. So I think like, if I'm being honest, the relationship should have been 2 years,
Yeah.
and I spent the two after that being like, if not me, then who?
Mhm.
And like
Mhm.
the empathy's still there. I'm like,
Mhm.
hope he got his stuff,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but I'm like, it's not coming from me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I have to learn how to be selfish in that way where I'm like, not for me.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. I
Exactly.
will not be a martyr. Like, that's kind of how I feel, like, with love in general. Like,
Mhm.
love should not create a desperate person out of me. Like, I don't want to be desperate
Yeah.
to make sure that, like, everybody has, like, everything, because it's, like,
Mhm.
impossible. I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't
'Cause
even
you
have
don't-
everything.
Exactly.
And I'm like, oh, God, if I leave you.
and also abandoning yourself
Mhm.
to love somebody
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
will never be a healthy
And it
dynamic.
also just, like, creates this feeling in your body that feels, like, so, like, misaligned
Yeah.
and, like,
Mhm.
Constant fight or
erratic.
flight.
And, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Like disgustingly dysregulated,
Yeah.
and you kind of like forget that you can only provide what you have,
Mm,
like more immediately, like your
Mhm. Yeah.
literal
And sometimes what I have is a
yeah.
period.
bye.
Yeah.
Like, mwah.
Well,
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
And also
yes.
people
Yeah.
sometimes you can't meet people where they're at, or they can't meet you where you're at.
yeah.
Yeah,
And on that note, we are
out of
at
time.
out of time. We are
Never
at-
out of time.
We're never out of
We're
time.
at a pause.
We're at a pause.
We're at a pause.
Yes, we're at a
We'll
pause.
Do this again.
Thank you for being here. You're
Love
so
you.
far
Can we
away,
get
but I
a
would reach over
I
to
love you
you.
so
I love you
much.
so much, and I'm so grateful for you and your friendship. Thank you for being here. Stay tuned for episode 3. I need to learn how to end episodes.
Yes.
I'm like,
great.
no free feet. No free feet
No
here.
free
I'm
feet.
wearing socks because no free feet. Literally,
Everybody got good profiles.
it's so funny. It's so funny because whenever somebody posts me now, like on my birthday, you were like, I'm gonna block out your feet because no free feet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everybody knows now that I'm like, if you're gonna post a full body pic of me,
My feet can't be
my
in it.
feet cannot be in it.
Yeah.